Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. It is one of those special days on the Feelings Pod where we have an in-house, a Max Fun friend of the show. We're all inherently friends of the show on one another's programs, I feel, at Maximum Fun. And today, my co-host is the host of the show, Black People Love Paramore. And so many other things. I feel like the secret subhead of that show is, and everything else that you associate with white culture but shouldn't. Sequoia Holmes, is there anything else that people need to know about you up top before we get started?
Jordan, that was such a good descriptor of what the show is. I'm I'm going to steal that. That is the descriptor of the show going forward. The subhead is what you said. Yeah, I love that.
I was actually listening to, I think it might have been, I was listening to the short episode you did for what was the background for why did I start Black People Love Paramore, and you started with your hot take, and it was that microwave bacon is better than bacon in the pan. And generally, I like pan bacon. I like microwave bacon and oven bacon. Absolutely, you get the even cook. You get the even bacon. Predictable cook. It was the part where I was like, what a fascinating life, was where you were like, when I chew on the gristly part of the bacon, that is my favorite part, I want it to rubber band back at me. And I was like, what a world. What a beautiful world we live in. The shit
that I have divulged on my podcast that I can't believe that I've said out loud, because that is a fact. And if someone came up to me and was like, Sequoia, I know that you like your bacon rubbery, pulled back, I'd be like, what the fuck? You're stalking me. I'm terrified. Meanwhile, I've given everybody all of my information on my podcast for the last 3 years. Every hot take that I have for the last 3 years. Including those ridiculous ones.
I really, in that moment, it became a thing of it's like, are you an edge brownie person or are you an in brownie person? An interior brownie person? And being oh, we're gonna be great roommates. You like the edges, I like the middle of the brownie. It's the same thing with this. It's do you like the skinny end of the bacon or do you like the fat end of the bacon? I like the skinny end of the bacon. So we can go out to breakfast.
You do?
And you can have that end of the bacon and I will have the skinny end, and we will both have our best bacon experiences.
Jordan, are you in LA? Because we're going to have to go to breakfast ASAP, actually, because that's nuts. I've never met anybody who likes the skinny portion of the bacon before.
That's my favorite part of the bacon. That hot take. Gosh. Look at that. We started this show with a hot take.
I love it.
Thanks to your influence here. It's not my show or your show now. This is our show, a special episode.
This is our show. Absolutely.
Hopefully, Black People Love Paramore, and hopefully also Feeling Seen. So it can be a true cultural crossover event.
Wow. No, because your intro is actually very similar to mine. So it's funny that you say that, because when you said your intro, I was like, wow, that sounds a lot like mine. It's funny. And because I'm like, oh, it's the podcast to help people feel seen. And then you're just called Feeling Seen. So yes, this is our show.
No, there is, listeners, if you've, let's be the great handshake of podcast sharing here. And hearing you talk about how you want it to be a space where Black listeners can feel seen. I was like, oh, I am loving the hitting home of the title thesis of my podcast, for us to come together as a Feeling Seen Voltron.
Oh, yeah, a Voltron. Yes, I like that. Perfect.
In the name of, can you tell us what the character and the movie is that you have brought for us to discuss today?
We are talking about Galleria from the Cheetah Girls.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I take a whacking and keep on smacking. Now, I am going to be a star. Do I have to be solo, or are you cheetahs ready to hit it big time? Cheetah!
I had not revisited this one in a while, and my biggest takeaway, my top line takeaway, was oh, the Cheetah Girls are as good as any R&B pop group from that
Jordan,
radio era.
You are so right. Honestly, 100%. A lot of the songs could have played on the radio. I don't know what was stopping them.
These are just Billboard hits. These are Billboard hits of the aughts.
Especially from the second movie in particular. Fantastic. They really drilled home for that second movie. I don't know who they hired to write it, but yeah.
That was honestly how I felt about Jennifer Lopez's last movie, Marry Me. Well, not last movie necessarily, but the movie Marry Me. I was like, this is the best Jennifer Lopez album we've had in years.
That's so
funny. And it's
funny.
so hard to write a song for a movie that's a hit that actually sounds like it would be a hit. Empire inexplicably I think Empire really did a perfect job with that conceit because it actually made some of the worst songs, I think.
Yeah.
And they were like, in this culture, in this monoculture of the show Empire, these are chart toppers. And you're watching it and you're like,
absolutely,
this vocal mix is so off, so you can't actually hear what anybody is singing. I don't think that would be true, but I love that it's your world and we have to adhere to your rules. It's like a slasher. That's not really real either. So like, it's just like, if I can suspend disbelief to be a big fan of slasher movies, I can suspend it enough to be like the hits of Empire. Solid gold.
Now we're talking. This is so true. This is very accurate. It's like this. You want me to believe this is a chart-topping single? Okay. Hey, it's your world. I'm just living in it. I guess. I don't know.
Chart-topping single. But speaking of chart-topping singles, the Cheetah Girls. Were you a DCOM consumer regularly, or was Cheetah Girls an exception for you?
Jordan, I was quite the DCOM consumer.
Yeah.
In fact, any DCOMs between maybe the year 2000 and 2000, let's say 2011.
I mean, a zenith.
I likely saw it.
I have a podcast called Auterion that is entirely dedicated to the horror cinema that released between like 1996 and 2013. That is just a reevaluation of trash classics from that time, as it filtered through the like social, cultural, and political landscape of the aughts. Because I mean, sure, my own personal generational bias, but in terms of like the maelstrom that it was, one of, to me, the most fascinating pop culture lenses you could possibly examine anything through is the aughts. What a nightmare. What a hellscape.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I actually want to start like some type of aughts podcast as well, because it is just it's such a specific time. And again, I also could have some generational bias here. This was my coming of age time, of course, but I don't know. It was special. It was special, and it was a dumpster fire. It was everything that you wanted it to be. And much less than you ever wanted it to be at the same time.
It was, and I think that's the magic of the aughts era, was that it was everything and nothing. And it was like homonormative and whitewashed and xenophobic.
And fat phobic as hell.
Yeah, no fats, no femmes, no Asians, like in the gay community, like
absolutely. And that was the tagline.
And yet it gave us everything. Like, I don't know how, like, we were so poisoned. I think us being here and being like okay today is such a testament to like the incredible interior work that millennials have really committed to.
Right. But granted, both of us have 2 podcasts. So that goes to say, are we okay? It's very much hard to say if we're okay.
So true.
We have lots of thoughts. We have feelings and thoughts. That's confirmed.
That is it. We're talking. That's confirmed.
We're definitely going to talk, okay? We're going to chat about it.
So how was your initial experience of it? Like, what are the conditions for the original Cheetah Girls watch? Do you remember?
I was 9 years old. I was in the 3rd grade, I want to say. It was 2003. So I was either in 3rd grade or 2nd grade. And I got home from school. I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this new little Disney Channel original movie that came out. It has Raven-Symoné in it. At this point in my life, I am obsessed with Raven-Symoné. I very much think that I am Raven-Symoné. I remember going to school and one of the little girls was like, you remind me of Raven so much, because I had modeled my entire personality after her. I spoke like her. Everything I could be that was Raven, I was going to be. So of course I was going to watch Cheetah Girls.
Yeah.
Watch Cheetah Girls. I felt like my life transformed before my eyes. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be a pop star. I'm absolutely going to be a pop star. I'm going to run a girl group, not just be in it. I'm going to run the girl group.
Hello, Jackal Johnson. I am Galleria Garibaldi. I'm the founder of the Cheetah Girls. I also wrote Cinderella, which I hope to record for you in the near future.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's set something up. Schedule.
Hold on. I am Dorothea Garibaldi, and there must be some misunderstanding here. You see, singing is just some, like, fun side thing for our girls. They're not professional.
Mom, this is Jackal Johnson. He's one of the biggest record producers of my time, Mother.
I was wondering if that was an aspect that you related to. Is this movie is so... I think this movie is so textured because Raven is our primary... She's like mostly our point of view character. And she is also, at points, our antagonist. or at least our anti-hero. And I think there is
Yes.
narrative complexity to that in a DCOM
Yes.
where Raven is clearly the star here. Raven is one of the definitive young stars of the era.
The Beyonce of
The
Disney Channel.
young Hollywood, the iconic young Hollywood cover of Vanity Fair with like Raven, Lindsay Lohan, Amanda Bynes, Alexis Bledel. I think maybe both Olsen twins were on there. Like Raven was there. She was
What a
this Mount Rushmore figure. So you're watching this movie, you know she's like the money-making star here, and you have her Cheetah girls around her. But then pretty quickly in the movie, this movie asks you like, how far are you willing to side with this person who is sort of becoming a dictatorial force in this foursome, a famously difficult dynamic to maintain in an entertainment capacity. But you're watching it and you're being like, I understand this heavy-handed leadership style of Galleria in this movie.
Wait, hold that down. Hey!
What?
Now that we're stars, we need to start acting like it.
Well, how's that?
Well, stars don't talk with their mouth full, and they don't carry bottles of hot papa sauce in their purses.
Read the label. Stars are no good food, dude. I love New York, but y'all don't know nothing about spicing up some food. I take a little bit of cousin with me everywhere I go.
Well, Aqua, I have a problem with your table manners. You better stash the sauce next time we see Jackal.
She took my hot sauce.
Guys, she's right. Looks do count.
I got something in my face.
Oh, shoot.
Literally me at 9 years old siding with Galleria down through and through. I'm like, yes, she's right. Whip these girls into shape. Why are they playing? Why are they wasting your time? What is going on?
This is...
Be for real, y'all. We have things to do. We don't have time for the little okie doke talent show, as Galleria says. We have to go play with Jackal Johnson.
We have Jackal Johnson. This was...
He's right
if
here.
we won this, it could have put us in the line of sight of Jackal Johnson, but now we've already done that. And
We've already done that. So what's the point? Drink up? Why are you upset? Drink a champagne.
This is Cheetah Girls, for those who might not have refreshed themselves in a while, is the story of a high school group of singers, the Cheetah Girls, and they are probably the premier talented group of artists in their high school, and they are on pace to compete and probably win a talent show at their school when they perform a rehearsal and land in front of the eyes of Jackal Johnson, the like star-making producer. So then it becomes a thing of like, they end up on this quick path to like, do we sign with this producer? Parents are kind of hovering over being like, you can't move too fast. You can't forfeit your integrity. But like, is the price of fame, is the siren song of celebrity going to tempt them away from one another and their friendship dynamics? And that is the story with like little internecine personal relationships that work their way through the movie. But it becomes sort of centrally between Galleria and the girls. It's like a Diana Ross and the Supreme situation.
It
becomes kind of Galleria and the Cheetah
that.
Girls, and then how everybody feels about that and is processing it, and how, whether or not they let her get away with that is the movie.
Very much that. Wow, that was such a succinct and good summary of the movie. Come on, Jordan.
Thank you.
It's like you do this professionally or something. Like on a podcast.
And I have to, like
every
you,
week.
like you said, like you're like behind her 100%. Pretty much almost everything she does, it's like it's coming from a good place, but she is like bullying the girls to kind of like her way or the highway. But the one time she's like more right than anything, I couldn't get over it. The one time she's more right than anything, like objectively, they're all like, I don't know, now it's time to stand up to her.
When she didn't want to sign to Jackal for lip syncing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't you like what we just did?
I loved it. It was great. But that's not what we sold the record company.
Well, I'm sorry. We can't change the Cheetah Girls.
Well, this is what they're interested in. And this is what they're paying for.
Well, fine. Then we bounce.
Could you excuse us for a second, please?
Sure, absolutely. Let's give these girls a chance to think about that world tour.
Why didn't you guys back me up?
You mean rubber stamp you. Gallery, you didn't even give us a chance to think.
Think about what, Doe? They're puppets. I mean, now at least we can be down for the talent show, and if we win, we can still have our demo.
Oh,
Don't front,
Cheetah,
Bubbles.
please.
Now you're all gung-ho for the talent show? maybe we need to do it this way first so we can get our shot. He knows the business. I really think we should consider it.
It's a job singing, dancing, and making people happy. What's wrong with that?
It's not our music.
It's not your song, so you want to walk.
That's the one time when she is like 100% watching out for all of their interests equally. It's not even like she's steamrolling. I was like, this is the one time you could be like, well, I guess her sensibilities have brought us to this point. She's making the right choice. So like, you can't just decide this for us, Galleria. I was like, no, she absolutely can decide this for you. They're going to turn you into a lip-syncing group of drones. And I was so mad at everybody suddenly for picking the exact worst time in the entire movie to stand up to Galleria.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. If there was one time everybody needed to stand up to Galleria, it was when she called Dorinda's outfit tore up and janky.
I got you these cute little clippings of outfits, which you could probably put together and hook it up for the next time we see Jackal. Hey, Doe. Take it, because it's not optional.
And, where exactly are you gonna go get your personality makeover? Because I forgot.
Oh, hold it down with the whack attack, Doe. We love you, okay? We just don't want you to look toe up and janky next time you see Jackal.
Torn up? How about this for torn up?
Whoa. Some people just don't know how they're coming off to others. She'll thank me in the long run.
She said, okay, that was
So
the time
mean.
when everybody needed to be like, baby, you have to go. You're doing much too much now. You have to go. But instead, they waited until she was like, hey, I don't think that we should put on masks and lip sync.
Yeah. We
I
shouldn't
don't-
mask
I don't
up
think we should wear a
as
seal
baby seals.
mask.
And as a baby seal and a polar bear, etc., and take this predatory record contract, and they're like, hey, you're getting out of line. It's time we call you out on it, Galleria.
They're like, now look, when I was wiping the bottom of your shoe and the shit on the bottom of your shoe when I was wiping that was fine. When you said Dorinda was poor and couldn't afford a good outfit, that was fine. But now
I was actually like in that scene with Dorinda where she calls her, she says like, you can't show up looking tore up and janky in a work meeting. I was like, is this the meanest thing I have ever heard in a Disney Channel movie?
It really was.
Wow.
It was so mean. And I would like to say, even as a 9-year-old, I was like, okay, Galleria, like, chill out. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't have to say that. Sure, the girl doesn't look great all the time. But that's okay. You can't borrow clothes. Like, why are you acting like that?
Well, I feel like too.
Yeah, it was really mean.
This like I liked that all of our. It's funny. Like I feel like something that happened in the 2000s. There was this like switch over between. I think it's a larger cultural thing, but I peg the switch over to like from the OC to Gossip Girl. It went from society went from and sort of fiction on screen went from like wealth will save you to like wealth will kill you, like wealth will ruin you.
Oh shit.
Whereas like we have the Sandy, we have the Cohen family, and they're like these rich people will sweep you into their rich house and they will like turn you into Cinderella and it'll be beautiful. And then by the time we get to a little later in the aughts with Gossip Girl, wealth is the poison pill that will like make you ruin yourself and question your morals for like status and success. And but before that, when wealth and like that was something we were still rooting for, we have Cheetah Girls in this moment where all of these characters besides Dorinda are rich. Like Raven Simone's character, like Galleria, seems to be wealthy. The other two girls in the group who are not Dorinda, they seem to be wealthy. And I feel like this movie is coming in at a time when we have like, it is like the sort of, it's the heyday of the rom-com, but it is also specifically the heyday of like the black rom-com and the black ensemble drama and comedy.
Yeah, you're so
and
right.
also like
yes.
the black family, like successful black family suburban sitcom era, Family Matters, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, obviously on the back of like a legacy like The Cosby Show. And so I feel like it's an interesting snapshot of at the time the way there was a sort of upward mobility for non-white characters in like the family fiction television space that feels now like it's so much more manufactured to get to that point, whereas it was more de rigueur at the time.
First of all, absolutely, you're 100% correct. And mentioning Hanging with Mr. Cooper, The Cosby Show, and Cheetah Girls, 3 Raven projects. That's so funny.
Yep.
She's in 3 of those. But yeah, no, you're totally right. I feel like the upward mobility of like the Black family, the Black character was so much more natural and almost expected during this time frame. Yeah. And like it didn't register to me that they were rich in the Cheetah Girls, because it was just like, this is just how Black people live. Gallery, I'm like, this is just how, I don't know, this is a Black life. Versus now, it definitely feels a little bit more pointed, more decisive. Like, hey, we're showing you we're juxtaposing the way that we as media interpret the way Black people live versus the way that we're going to show you that they live online. And this may be like rich family, like Blackish or something.
Yeah. Like it feels kind of like the bringing back of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air now. There's a sort of defiant attitude to the presence of Black family in this ultra wealthy sphere of Beverly, whereas the wealth was sort of taken on its face in the original incarnation of the show, whereas now we sort of have to front how like, and not for better or for worse, but just like we have to come to the fore with what are the politics of this family existing at this place, and the way that this son of this family has to perform a kind of Blackness to be acceptable within the racial politics of his ecosystem. And that, like, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. Like I'm not the best stakeholder in it, but like that feels like where you could not, I guess you could in a way, like, take for granted that people who were not white could just be there in a way in fiction. Right. Whereas now it's like, hey, you know these folks are here, and like, you better fucking deal with it. As opposed,
and are they out of place? Do they feel out of place? Yeah. Is that part of their story? Yeah, it's like, no, they're not out of place. But it's always somehow ends up as part of the story to some degree, which to be fair, it's my lived experience, and that is an accurate lived experience. I will say that I do watch television for escapism, and also relatability, but also escapism. And so I would love not to be. I want to be seen. I saw myself in Raven Simone. I don't want to be seen that severely.
Sure. This gets at something that I was listening to you talk about on an episode of Black People of Paramore, which is, you were discussing stereotypes, and you were saying that like this show, Black People of Paramore, is not about like de-entangling stereotypes. It doesn't exist to be like, hey, but don't like, let me myth bust those stereotypes you saw. And I find that I think about this a lot with queer representation in things where to move away from the uniform notion of the gay best friend and like the one way that can exist in fiction, there is an implication of damning the notion of the gay best friend or the very flamboyantly homosexual or queer character that is in something. And there's kind of this implication that we need to move away from portrayals like that because they are damaging. When a stereotype doesn't have to be bad, we can't only have those. And I wanted to hear from you about the difference in like appreciating commonality and common points of identification and not being afraid of a stereotype as something that is purely pejorative, but like a reclamation of it, I don't know, or what more well-rounded depiction can make stereotyping less of an acerbic or damaging thing. But yeah, if you talk about culture in your podcast, so I was hoping we could get into that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. It's exactly what you just said, Jordan. It's not that stereotypes are necessarily a bad thing. It is that they are incomplete. And that's what makes them so damaging. It's the one story becoming every story. Chimamanda Ngozi talks about this. She had like a TED talk where she talked about it, which is where I got a lot of this language that I'm using currently from. But yeah, it's like, we do want a more well-rounded story, but I also don't want to say that stereotype over there is so wrong or so hurtful, because that's not it. It's the fact that stereotype is forced upon everybody, and we do not. It's dehumanizing at the end of the day. That's what it is. It's dehumanizing. If that is all that we're allowed to be, that doesn't leave space for growth in any capacity. And I just want us to be able to grow and thrive and flourish in a way that feels natural to each of us individually, even if that aligns 100% with stereotypes or if that aligns 0% with stereotypes. Neither is more valuable than the other to me.
It's so hard to talk around the stereotype and say we're going to junk it entirely when it also has become, like, you're watching Cheetah Girls and Raven Simone is being Raven Simone. She's being the sort of persona that we've come to love about her. And it seems to be, like, at least in its presentation, a persona unself-conscious of how white, it decenters the whiteness around Raven to let her be the fullness of that thing that made her such a star and, like, kind of an empire at this Disney Channel, Nickelodeon level.
That decentering piece that you just spoke on, I think that is likely why it resonated with me so severely at 9 years old. I obviously couldn't determine what that was or what it is that I was experiencing, but I had just went from a very mixed private school to a predominantly white public school for the first time. So it was probably one of my earlier experiences with being explicitly marginalized in a way that I wasn't in the years prior. So I was acclimating to that new environment, and then this thing drops where this girl gets to be the fullest version of herself, flaws and all. And a lot of her flaws were very fucking ugly.
Yeah.
I would like to point out, but flaws and all, she was able to be the fullest version of herself without shame. She did not have any shame. And I was not having that experience at that time. So I was living vicariously through her, seeing myself through her, like, wow, I am deserving of solid friendships and forgiveness and to be able to flub, and my flaws are acceptable and I can reconcile the ones that are not, or, you know, try to make good for my mistakes and that type of thing. So I was seeing myself in Raven because she was so centered in her world. And I felt like even in my own world at that time, I was not centered.
Hands up if you know that you're a star. You better stand up if you know just who you are. Never give up, never come too far. Girl power, girl power.
How you like that, Toto? I like it too. It's gonna be our demo. I'm ready for Jackal. Hope everybody else is.
Well, and it too, like, I think that's such a, like, again, the kind of texture of this movie is actually pretty impressive because they're, like, as the sort of equity shift started happening and how we started talking about, like, gender representation on screen and Time's Up and that sort of thing, there, like, the notion of, like, the unlikable female character and that being, like, you know, Fleabag and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. This is a decom about an unlikable female central character, and it lets not only a girl be an unlikable character, a teen girl and a black teen girl be the unlikable character who it's also going to be like, but she's still going to be the beating heart of the Cheetah Girls by the time this movie ends. And to be able to watch her carry that arc through, I think that's a really cool thing that this movie was able to pull off. It exists on the star power of Raven Simone. Like, they can write that because they know you're going to stick with Raven Simone.
Raven can carry it. We know that we're going to follow Raven wherever she goes. We've followed her since she was 3 years old, wherever she goes. And also, I would like to point out, at that time, Raven was seen as plus sized. So that was another thing. I would also like to point out that she wasn't. But for the early aughts, as we've talked about, things were so skewed. The lens through which we were seeing women, girls, women's bodies, femmes bodies, it was very, very skewed, very concerning. So Raven was dealing with all of these intersections of oppression, I would say. She was in a bigger body than the other girls. She was black, she was female, and she was portraying an unlikable character. And yet she prevails and carries through another film. And even was given the opportunity to carry through a third and decided herself that she was not going to carry through that third, but was given the opportunity. She led her own television show at this time. I think she was the first black girl on Disney Channel to lead a television show. I don't know if there's been one since.
I would think so, yeah.
I'm sure there probably has been one since now, but there hadn't been one since in a long
I'm not
time.
sure enough about the specifics of where Zendaya and Keke Palmer were, whether they were Nick or Disney kids. And
Keke was Nick.
Okay, yeah.
Zendaya was Disney, but I think she was part of more of an ensemble
Yeah,
cast.
I think she was more of a supporting, like an ensemble character.
It was Bella Thorne and her, and they were the two. This was right after I stopped watching Disney. So I have tangential bits and pieces from this era of Disney. Yeah, it's like, yeah, those girls existed. I know they were doing something together as a duo. But yeah, so Raven was a special case for me, and she holds a special place in my heart. Galleria obviously holds a special place in my heart, but Raven Simone specifically holds a special place in my heart. Even to this day, Raven, has done a lot of things that people don't like, has said a lot of things that people don't like. And you would have to pry that lady out of my cold, dead hands, because she meant so much. She was so important to my little 9-year-old psyche. It was so important that I saw her as the representation that I needed on television.
It's time for a break, but I'll be right back with more Sequoia Holmes. And then at the end, I will have one quick thing before I go about the DTV action movie on everyone's lips, the Jessica Alba starring Trigger Warning on Netflix.
Since 2017, Maximum Film has had the same slogan.
The podcast that's not just a bunch of straight white guys.
Ooh, we've learned something over the years. Some people out there really do not like that slogan.
Listen, we love straight white guys.
Well, some of them.
But if there's one thing we can't change, it's who we are.
I'm Iffy, a comedian who was on strike last year in 2 different unions.
I'm Drea. I've been a producer and film festival programmer for decades.
And I'm Alonzo, a film critic who literally wrote the book on queer Hollywood.
You can listen to us talk movies and the movie biz every week on Maximum Film.
We may not be straight white guys, but we love movies, and we know what we're talking about.
Listen to Maximum Film on Maximum Fun or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Oh, darling, why won't you accept my love?
My dear, even though you are a duke, I could never love you. You borrowed a book from me and never returned it.
Save yourself from this terrible fate by listening to Reading Glasses.
We'll help you get those borrowed books back and solve all your other reader problems.
Reading Glasses, every Thursday on Maximum Fun.
Welcome back to Feeling Seen. I'm talking with Sequoia Holmes, host of our fellow Max Fun podcast, Black People Love Paramore. She's always felt seen by Raven Simone, and especially when Raven played Galleria Garibaldi in the 2003 Disney Channel original movie, The Cheetah Girls, an elite tier DCOM. So let's jump back into that. I think what's so interesting about your project with Black People Love Paramore is growing up when we did was such a time of compartmentalization of like who could be interested in what and like again what belonged to straight people and what belonged to gay people and what belonged to white people, and then anybody that was not a white person that was probably congealed into a monolith of broadly people of color. And
yeah,
so it feels like what you do with Black People Love Paramore, it feels like it gets to be the sort of like grown-up reaction to that like segmenting of the interest, like the way a personality had to exist in compartments in such a way, and allowing it to come into like a full fluorescent unified human being who can like Paramore and country music and ginger ale and be like, hey, surprise, this doesn't belong to anyone actually. This doesn't belong to anybody, but I still don't want to hear you talk about it, white people. Like
that's the main thing. It's like I've heard white folks talk about these things. There's been no deficit of white folks talking about these things. There has been a deficit of other folks talking about these things because we've been told that they're not for us. We've been shamed out of liking them, or we've been shamed out of being vocal about liking them, should I say. So now that we are older and times have shifted and we don't have to have that shame anymore, we are loudly stating what we used to like, what we currently like, and all that stuff. And we're finding that other folks have been doing the exact same thing. It's like, oh shit, I didn't realize that other Black people were listening to Paramore. This whole time we're in like high school being like quietly listening to Paramore in our headphones, right? And being like, yeah, my friends don't know anything about this. My friends couldn't relate. And meanwhile, your friend is literally sitting there doing the exact same thing. It's that shame piece. Shame thrives in silence. So I'm trying to give a voice to things so that the shame can go away.
Listening in your podcast to where you talk about, I think it was the very first episode. I wanted to go back and listen to that. And you were talking about how like every year, the tweet goes viral of like, hey, did you know Black people like Paramore? And like, you said that, I was like, oh my God, I do recognize. It feels like it does happen once or twice a year. Someone posts like a meme image of like Arnold Schwarzenegger's arm from Terminator, and like the unifying word over the fists is it's like white people, Black people, Paramore is like the fist joining them together. And I was like, wow, this is like an actual cultural stand-in. Like the assertion of Black people of Paramore is in and of itself a kind of movement.
It really is. And that's why I decided to name it that, because I went through a few, brainstorms. I was like, I could just name it Black people of pop culture. I could name it Black people of blank. But I was like, not laughing. But I was like, the cultural unifier really is Paramore. It's like a rallying cry. Black people love Paramore is a dog whistle of sorts. Like, oh, this is a certain experience. This is we're no longer shaming the experience. I wonder what else is here. I'm hoping people get to the I wonder what else is here of it. That's the intention.
Have you been surprised? Has there been a process of discovery for you as you've done this over the years of topics that have come up? Like, well, shit, we're getting to that. Like, I never thought we'd get there. Or people have guest brought you like talking like hook points where you've been like, I had no idea. And you get into that. Like, what has been sort of your favorite surprise of doing the show?
The most notable one, I would say, is Tony Hawk. I don't know how this fully evaded me, but it did.
Wow.
But it also regularly goes viral with the same fist meme.
Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Always with the same little fist meme. And it's regarding Tony Hawk. There's a specific meme about Tony Hawk. They're pretty much saying that they would save Tony Hawk in a race war. They're like, if there was a race war and we had to like figure things out, I would hate to have to kill Tony Hawk. That's like the main thing. Everybody's like, no, I don't think I could do it. Like, I don't think I can do it. That is an impressive
distinction. That is an impressive distinction.
Funny. It's so funny. And Tony Hawk has responded to it a few times. And he's like, wow, I feel really grateful at your hesitation about having to kill me in the race. I really do. I'm thankful that you would hesitate before you had to do that. That means a lot to me. And so when someone brought that to me, like Tony Hawk as a topic, I was like, do Black people love Tony Hawk? And I did one little Twitter search and I was like, damn, where have you been? I'm just not on this side of the internet. That's I like to say, that's like, people with more traditionally male interests.
Right.
Just didn't have that when I was, growing up. So there's been other ones too. I can't think of what the other ones have been, but there's been a number of topics that people have brought me and I'm like, okay, you know what? Someone brought me house music. And that one, I was like, no. I did like 3 seconds of research. And this was before Beyonce dropped Renaissance. This was like way before that.
Right.
I did like 3 seconds of research and I was like, damn, Black people not only like house music, Black people started house music in Detroit, I think, and I just didn't know shit. Like,
just add that to the list.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, that too. Oh, it's New Jack City. Thank you, Pamir, from the meme that I was talking about before. It's New Jack City.
Nice. Oh, God. Is that him crying with like the gun pointed at the...
Yes, it's him crying with the gun. Yes, he's like, when I get to Tony Hawk in the race war, yeah.
I can see that image so clearly.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love anytime that meme is deployed in like the optimal way, it like doesn't get better than that. That's like it's like the peak of the internet because it's like the scene from In Context is so devastating and awful. And
I haven't seen it.
It's so good. Like his character is so in deep at that point, and he's using the drugs at that point. It's all coming off the rails, and he's having to kill someone so important to him, and he's crying up there. And so when I see it's such a devastating tableau, but when someone replies it with the perfect amount of cheek to it, it is just internet zenith kind of moment.
And Tony Hawk thought that as well, so he appreciated the meme usage with regard to his safety as well. So
now I'm wondering about being the Galleria that you were you a tyrannical child? Were you a child overflowing with confidence?
Oh wow, this is such an interesting question. Yes and no. I feel like my confidence was beginning to be squelched at this time.
Oh, okay.
Prior to this, I would probably say that I was a rather confident and bossy child. And simultaneously, not shy, but definitely introverted. And that if you didn't speak to me, I wasn't going to speak to you. But once we became friends or something, I was your manager. I was your boss.
Got it. I'm glad you saved that for only your friends.
Yeah, well, yes. Just my friends were receiving that heinous treatment and everybody else was spared. But yeah, I was like, I'm going to hold auditions for my own little girl group in third grade on a rainy day. We weren't allowed to go outside. So I was like, what better time than to survey the class and figure out who wants to join my girl group, who's going to be a member. So I told everybody, if you want to be in the Cheetah Girls, elementary school edition, line up over here. I'm going to be validating your vocal ability. Not that I had any at all, but I really thought I did at this time. I really thought I did. Jordan, did you ever record yourself singing as a child to see what you sounded like?
Until I got really into Karaoke League in my late 20s.
Oh my goodness.
This was in San Francisco. I was in a competitive karaoke league for 2 years. And until that, and I even did musical theater. Until that, I thought singing in public was the scariest thing a person could do. Not public speaking. Love that. Love attention. Love being on stage. But singing in public, the scariest thing.
And then you dove head first into a karaoke league. Hold on. This is the most interesting thing I've ever heard in my life. I need to know more about a karaoke league.
Yeah. It was a magical time where the idea of not liking singing in public until that, I will say it was one of the most beautiful, self-confidence building, panoply of the human experience things I could have imagined doing. You watch people at the beginning of those 2 years go from shy to by the end of it be full center stage, front women of their groups. It was amazing renaissance. It was the stuff that Glee is made of.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Wait, I might need parts in this. I've been trying to figure out, do I need to take an improv class? Do I need to take a public speaking class? What would be helpful? This seems like it'll do all of those things in one. And that's what I'm going to look toward.
I think it could.
I'm forcing all of my friends. I'm having my 30th birthday this year. And part of the whole thing is I'm getting an Airbnb. We're having a night in where we just do karaoke. Yes. And I know my friends are so fucking sick of me. They're like, girl, you're so annoying. You're already having us do all this shit. Now you want us to sing and dance for you too. Yes, it is just like I am holding auditions for the Cheetah Girls again. I was going to say,
because the Galleria is so truly within you.
You know what I mean? She's just here. She just sits with me. She guides me. She is one of my guides.
So what in the progression, you were this is where you were starting to kind of feel questions to your confidence. How does being the Galleria naturally conflict with perhaps a questioning of the confidence? Because Galleria obviously she has moments where she's sad and she's upset in this movie, but she also is kind of, and she knows when she's been a bitch to people. She's like, I'm sorry I was mean. But in terms of the stuff with Jackal, when she's like, we will not be your lip syncing puppets and you will not put these masks on us, she reinforces to her mom, she's like, I know I did the right thing. And then when the cute boy at school tells her you did the right thing, she's like, I know I did. So she maintains the courage of her convictions in that. So how was the process of being Galleria with the onset of being a middle schooler and changing schools and this challenge to your sense of self?
It was so weird to rebuild that sense of self and rebuild those convictions. I feel like I've always been a very convicted person. And this was around the time where I was starting to bump up against being sure about myself. And while our convictions are just that, they're not facts, you know, they're not a sure thing.
Right.
I always felt so grounded in my convictions until I wasn't. And that was very weird. So it was so good to watch somebody remain grounded in their convictions on my screen, even when they were a little bit wrong.
Calling Dorinda tore up and janky.
It was so wrong. It was so bad. But yeah, it was like, oh, I can tap into this person. This is someone that I can look to whenever I'm feeling a little bit shaky, or when someone has kind of pointed at a specific insecurity and I'm feeling a little bit unsure of myself.
I worked on all the songs. I worked on our look. I buckled everything down. I thought that we were all on the same page.
I'm sure you did what was right. But what's right for you may not be right for someone else.
And it's not worth losing a friendship over.
How could we be friends again?
Oh.
I mean, they want fame. And there are ways. And then there are ways. And I want fame the Cheetah Girl's way.
The Cheetah Girl's way or your way?
We work too hard to give it up. I have to stand up for what's right.
Oh, sweetheart, I tried so hard to protect you from getting your dreams crushed. But there's no way I could save you from this heartache. You see, sometimes you just have to let go. And let the people you love make their own choices. Even if you don't agree with them, you see, I'm learning to do that with you. And you've got to learn with your friends.
What difference does it make? You either walk with the devil or you don't. And I said no. And I was right.
To be a teen Galleria sort of has its place in the sense that, like, okay, outspoken, challenging child, or, you know, she's precocious. She knows how is reconciling being the Galleria with, like, the adult ecosystem of having to placate and manage personalities?
I have learned the hard way, one, that I'm not always right, and two, to shut the hell up sometimes, you know? Like, I'm like, sometimes you can just let somebody else do it, let somebody else's way go, often, in fact.
Often,
like, it's fine. Yeah, like, it's actually okay. You're going to survive if you're wrong. You're going to survive if someone else does all the work. It's okay. You'll be okay.
Has delegation been a great challenge?
Honestly, no. Delegation has never been a challenge because I've always liked to be the boss. You know, so I'm like, yeah, I just will tell you what to do. It's when folks want to do something different than what I want them to do. That was an issue that I've had to work on and have, you know, gotten much better with as an adult, I would say.
Although I was, one of my favorite opportunities I've had on the show was to have Cara Brown on, who I came up as a writer reading her at Jezebel when, like, we were both, like, millennials on blogs, and she brought Katharine Hepburn from the Philadelphia Story. And I was like, so did you bring this character because you've always been this way? And she was like, yes, I have. And the satisfaction of knowing that Cara Brown has always known she was that kind of bad bitch was, like, so validating to, it was kind of like a yes, meet your heroes moment. She didn't, like, demystify it. She wasn't like, listen, you know, I was full of hot air. She's like, no. I've always known. I was like, God, it really feels like you have, and I'm so happy to know that you have.
Yeah, yeah. I love those types of moments. It's like, yeah, you are exactly who I thought you are. Congratulations. I love that. Yeah.
And it's something, it feels like something so positive that 9-year-old girls should absolutely have the opportunity to witness, because, like, you are about to, like, you're about to get into tween. You're in, like you're close to pre-adolescence, when there's so much that's gonna come your way that's gonna, like, shake your ground a little bit, that's gonna, like, make you develop your sea legs. I would I hope as many little girls as possible, as many little like genderqueer kids as possible can come out of the gate feeling like little dictators who are calling the shots of their own lives, because they should feel invincible. You should feel invincible when you're that little.
I fully agree. Little black girls, I hope that you become the dictators that you deserve to be. Okay. Just like me, I hope you become the best dictator that you can be. And also, another thing about Galleria, when I was 9, I was going through puberty already. I was a little bit early. I was blooming a little bit early.
That's so hard. Being the early girls are so
it really
hard.
Was. And so I had like boobs, I was like starting to grow breasts, starting to grow like hips and all
it's
that
so
was
much
happening.
To ask you to fucking be responsible. Oh no.
And I got to see Galleria on television. I was like, oh, there's somebody on Disney Channel who has breasts and hips, because nobody else did. They weren't allowed to. They wanted them to look prepubescent for as long as possible. And Galleria simply didn't, because that wasn't her.
That is such a good point to raise.
Yeah. And the fact that Raven's body was definitely a point of contention. It was a point that people talked about often, and as was mine at this time. So I just felt a lot of kindred spiritness with the Galleria and Raven Simone.
Well, I could bring up one more thing, but then I would also just bring up 10 more things, and then we would be beyond the conceivable limits of responsibly turning over an episode to need to be edited for show. So I will just say, Sequoia, thank you so much for coming in and bringing this very important character and actor for us to discuss today, and for taking the time and sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jordan. You're so good at this. I really like what you're doing. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this.
Absolutely. At any time. Truly any time. Thank you so much to Sequoia Holmes, my maximum fun sister in arms. If you are not listening to Black People Love Paramore, you are missing out. And you can find it anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's extremely convenient. As for the Cheetah Girls, you can find that on Disney+. And find Raven Simone, honestly, wherever you can. And now, that one quick thing before I go. There's a Jessica Alba action movie. The Dark Angel herself has a new action movie on Netflix. You could have probably guessed that. That feels like a great home for DTV action these days. It's called Trigger Warning. I was looking at her IMDb, and it seems like the last like substantial thing she did was 2020. It was that show LA's Finest that was basically like, what if it's bad boys, but it's women. It was her and Gabrielle Union. And I believe it was if you missed it, it's probably because it was a Spectrum original, available only for Spectrum subscribers. Weird time. But you know what? I watched Trigger Warning, and I got out of it exactly what I wanted to, which was seeing Jessica Alba be a special forces soldier coming back to her hometown after the tragic death of her father, and, in the process of trying to settle his affairs, realizing that foul play might be the cause of her father's untimely demise in this small southwestern town. Could have been Texas. I was thinking New Mexico. Seemed like New Mexico. But yeah, you know what Trigger Warning works great for? An educational endpoint on the existence of Jessica Alba as an actress to Gen Z. That was part of my viewing experience as I was watching it. With Moa, who I'm married to, and she could not recognize Jessica Alba from a lineup. So I am glad to spread the gospel of the fact that Jessica Alba is a screen actor, and that was her first job before she ran a baby product company. So we're out here spreading the word of Jessica Alba. Her eyebrows are full. Her hair is black. She is wearing cowboy boots fabulously. Her character Parker, cool name. Her character Parker prefers operating with a knife. She'll use a gun if she needs to, but she's gonna default to like the biggest blade you got, which, always is a fun texture to a fight scene. Yeah, this movie's fun. This movie is straight to digital action, And that is a robust and honorable category. And I'm so glad we can welcome, once again, the Dark Angel back into the fold. That's it. That's our show. Shouts out to you. Welcome back, Jessica Alba. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FeelingScenePod. You can do that too, Jessica Alba. Or send us an email at feelingscene@MaximumFun.org. If you want to follow me, I am JorCrew on Twitter. JorCru. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported directly by you.